Today on Mother Mayhem.
What I have come to see and believe is that trauma actually changes what belonging feels like inside of your bodies. Welcome back to Mother Mayhem, the podcast for daughters of narcissistic and emotionally limited mothers. I'm your host, Heather Gray. And normally, right about now, is when I say, and today I'm introducing you to Claire. And yes, there is a Claire. And yes, I'll introduce her to you in just a minute. But I don't actually think I'm just introducing you to Claire. At least I hope I'm not. Because if I get this conversation right for all of you, I'm also introducing all of you a little bit more to yourselves. So, several weeks ago, back at episode 141, I had a conversation with all of you about what the healing path looked like for many of you daughters, and I affirmed for you what I have come to believe in my bones. The healing attachment wounds has to happen inside of connection, inside of community. Now, it doesn't need to be found inside of the Mayhem community per se, but it does need to be found inside of connection with the people in your life. Watching that happen inside of Mayhem has been the greatest privilege of my life. But I also get letters all the time from women not inside of our online community, just listeners to the show, who tell me that their relationships with themselves and others have improved as a result of listening to the show, and that is always going to be one of my proudest accomplishments. More healthy connection is all I want for all of you, honestly. After that episode aired, I got a comment from Claire, and Claire said, "It's also important to remember that looking for others to mirror us isn't always easy to find. It's why so many of us get stuck with repeated patterns because being alone is scary. Therapists can preach all day about community and finding support, but let's be honest, that is very hard to find." And Claire, I agree with you. 1,000%. I agree with you. And I believe you. I felt this comment so deeply when I read it. You are so very right. Community really can be so hard to find. That doesn't stop me from wanting it for any of you daughters, but it also, too, doesn't stop me from believing that it's possible for all of you daughters either. I'm hoping I can move all of you a little bit closer to connection with this conversation. Claire, I don't think you're at all describing an experience that is rare for any of the daughters listening. Your comment spoke to a truth that I think a lot of daughters are silently and privately living with right now. And I think they think they're the only ones, or that something's wrong with them for having this problem. And I am really so glad you spoke up about it. I'm really grateful to you for the opportunity to extend the conversation, because this is probably the conversation of my life. Not this particular episode, no pressure, Claire, but this theme, this issue, it's everything for me right now. I do think a lot of daughters are looking around their lives here and they're thinking to themselves that connection seems so much easier for everyone else. And I know that personally, I have felt that 1,000 times in my own lifetime. Claire, you are speaking to a really familiar struggle for me, and also for so many of you, that the idea of connection sounds well and good in theory, but how in the actual fuck do you do it? This is a conversation with a lot of layers. So, my friends, sisters, sit back, settle in. Claire, I don't think you knew what you were getting yourself into. But here goes. Claire, I want to start with the thing that took me personally forever to really actually understand. Many a therapist found themselves knocking their heads against walls, trying to get me to see and believe this. But Claire, what you're speaking to and what you all are thinking about, this isn't actually a friendship problem. It's actually part of how we all developed, how so many of us grew up. So many daughters just assume they're bad at friendship and that they think they are the problem. But the truth is, developmentally and socially, many of us just ended up behind the pack because of how we were raised. We ended up relationally behind. Think about it for a second. Kids in healthy and loving households have opportunities to learn who they were, what they liked, how to make friends, how to disagree, how to make up, how to invite people over, all the things. They learned how to belong. And while those kids were learning all of that, you were all learning different things like how to keep your mom happy, how to scan her moods. You became experts in staying out of trouble. And instead of playing dodgeball, actually, now that I use that example, fuck dodgeball. Dodgeball is awful. It is hell on earth. Instead of playing any game besides dodgeball, you all were trying to figure out how you could assure yourselves of safety and, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, dodge the next fight. Instead of playing hide and seek, all of you were learning how to hide whoever you actually were becoming, or you were working on becoming whoever you needed to become in order to get through the moment. And look what happens when we lay it all out like that, right? Look where we land with this when we start to see it from this particular lens. We're essentially describing two entirely radically different childhood experiences, or for even a better word, curriculum, right? Growing up, my own parents, were super strict. I essentially was in a room by myself whenever I was home or I was working with my dad. The school I went to had to bully my dad into letting me do extracurricular activities for my college applications because I was either at home, at school, working for my dad. Full stop. So in my room, I had my books. I was sometimes allowed to listen to music. I wasn't allowed to go to friends' houses. Friends weren't allowed to come to mine. And I was only able to make friends in school. And it was pretty hard to make any kind of close friend in just the margin of a school day. And I probably at some point have shared this on the show before, but my first orientation week in college, oh my God, you guys, I was like a social disaster. Everything about hanging out with other kids with absolutely no structure and nothing to do felt so incredibly foreign to me. And I found the whole thing to be crawling out of my skin uncomfortable. I remember hanging out in a dorm room. I was just remembering this with a friend of mine. I remember hanging out in a dorm room with her and a bunch of other kids. I was so positively sure that I was doing the whole hanging out thing wrong. All I wanted to do was get back to my own room, my own bed, and enjoy the fact that for the first time in my life, I had a private little TV VCR combo. Yes, dating myself again. And I could finally watch as much TV as I wanted to. So in this particular story, it's like 8 o'clock at night. And I remember this so well. I looked at the clock and I said, well, I should be getting back to my room. And I remember everyone just looking at me and asking why. And I remember not being able to say, only that feeling in my body that I wasn't supposed to be doing what I was doing, and that if I was surely doing it wrong. Now I'm pushing 50 years old, my friends, and that memory still lives in my body like it happened yesterday. I can still remember what it felt like, how foreign and out of place I felt. So many of you daughters, in some way, shape, or form or another, landed right into adulthood like I did, with a crash landing to the ground. Or maybe you guys, some of you, did that whole soft fluttery thing where you hid in bushes in the corner of rooms or home by yourselves, because all of us found ourselves years behind in being able to practice what the psychobabblers would call secure attachment. The daughter experience growing up was about survival, far more than it was about anything resembling anything close to healthy connection. And I think a lot of us do a lot of muddling through. We fawn, we people please, we mask, we be whatever we think the role we're in demands of us, or what we think the person in front of us wants to be. And then, as a lot of you are listening experience, and I know I did too, you end up at 30, 40, 50, and you find yourself thinking, God damn, everyone else just seems to know how to do this. And some of this is, of course, the stories we create for ourselves, but we do end up finding ourselves thinking that everyone else just naturally knows how to make friends, how to be comfortable in groups, how to invite people over, and how to be in relationship and how to stay connected. And here's what's so easy for all of us to forget. Those people, some of them, of course we know this, right? Are just fucking faking it till they make it like the rest of us. But others around us, they just have thousands of hours of practice that we just didn't get to have. Don't get me wrong here. None of these people who seemingly have it all figured out were ever actually sat down and taught belonging. Well, maybe they were, but honestly, that sounds awful. So hopefully they weren't. But their lives gave them opportunities to practice belonging. They got to have sleepovers and birthday parties. They hung out with other kids after school. They played sports, were in youth groups. Even something as simple as like waiting for a ride with other kids or hanging out with other kids while other parents are talking. I always remember my parents just always endlessly wanting to get in and out as fast as possible. I was dropped off and picked up from end to end of the activity with no kind of social grace time allowed. Kids in homes without abuse, they got to, this sounds so dumb as I say it out loud, but they got to practice being bored together or walking home together. And maybe they got to hang out with friends on the weekends, because here's the thing about relationships that I only really clicked into way into adulthood. Most relationships don't actually have an instant click. They happen because two or more people keep ending up in the same place. It's the repeated seeing each other and bumping into each other that creates that kind of familiarity. And it's that familiarity that creates safety. And here's what we know about that, right? What you have heard me say on the show 1,000 times. It is safety that makes connection possible. You daughters who have longed for connection, you've never missed that desire or that longing. Honestly, maybe some of you have, because we do have those protective parts of ourselves after all. But what I want to speak to right now is that desire to connect, but you were never given the chance to get your reps in. So, as a therapist, even before I specialized in childhood attachment and trauma, I have always known that the things we've been through affect how we connect with others. And that has always made sense to me. Something that I've really come to learn from you, daughters, specifically, though, is what I have come to see in our groups. And it's not just that relationships are changed by trauma. I actually think it goes a little bit deeper in a way that's a little more important. What I have come to see and believe is that trauma actually changes what belonging feels like inside of your bodies. Trauma changes what your nervous system experiences when people start to get close to you. I said this a little bit in that episode that Claire's speaking to back in 141. But everything about connection really asks you to do what your childhoods taught you not to do. Think about belonging. It's going to challenge any of us because we have to trust. It forces us to allow ourselves to need and receive. And if we're being really honest here, belonging inevitably means asking us to disappoint someone or disagree with someone, make a mistake. And when it comes to belonging, we're challenged to survive conflict. And then, despite all of that, and with all of those things, those super hard things present, belonging demands of us to let ourselves be seen and known. And we can't ever forget or minimize that even healthy people with normal childhoods, they are going to experience that as vulnerability. And vulnerability is uncomfortable. But for daughters, oh my goodness, some of you, you don't just experience vulnerability as uncomfortable because, P.S., thanks to trauma, you experience vulnerability as unsafe, as dangerous, as being at risk. Think about what I said about that dorm room I was in at the start of college. I was welcomed, but I didn't at all feel like I belonged. And so many of you know this part too. You can have friends and still feel incredibly alone because belonging isn't ever going to be just about being around people. It's believing that you in your whole self have a place among them. And Claire, I really do think you're right on the money here. Community really does feel harder here. Adulthood can be lonely. People move and live further apart. A lot of places and ways that communities have traditionally grown have completely disappeared. I used to belong to gyms and now I press play on my Peloton app. I don't think it's just daughters who are lonely. I do see community shifting in a lot of ways, in a lot of places. And also, inarguably true here, it's the fact that daughter brain always adds another layer and another obstacle. Because here's what daughter brain does. Ask me how I know, my friends. In an effort to keep you safe, it starts to interpret uncertainty as rejection. We tell ourselves stories that other people are just being polite, and we assume things like everyone already has their people, or we look to ourselves and we start to say, I talk too much. I didn't talk enough. I'm too boring. We start to criticize ourselves with things like, I shouldn't have said that. I'm probably bothering that person. And we decide things like, I will wait for them to invite me. See what happened right there? See what I walked you through? I knew my CBT training, ding, 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 would come in handy for you guys at some point. Our thoughts really then can become our behaviors. Those behaviors we think are shielding us and we think they're protecting us, but in actuality, they become our walls. And those walls create separateness and distance. And distance, wouldn't you know it, becomes our evidence. And off to that courtroom you've heard me talk about a couple episodes in a row now, we go to. Daughters, love yourself some evidence. All the things that back up all the stories, all the walls that keep you safe. And then we find ourselves right back in that gosh darn familiar cycle all over again. See what I just walked you through? So many of you daughters are just like Claire. We're all a little bit like Claire, right? Desperately wanting connection, but also thinking we have to edit ourselves in order to have it. So we become agreeable and low maintenance. We're helpful. We're funny. We accommodate. We become endlessly interested in anyone or everyone else. And then we look at what that creates. Can't you see why we don't ever feel connected? Right? Do you see that? Because who is actually in connection when we're doing those things? It's not actually us. It's a version of us. And then so many of you end up learning something that's pretty confusing in the end, and it ends up being pretty different from anything you ever intended. You come to see that edited people, those edited versions of yourself, they absolutely can be accepted. But you will never feel like you belong, right? We water down, we edit, we make ourselves smaller to connect, and then we miss out entirely on what it feels like to actually belong. And this is the part that's a little bit hard for me to say here. When you have only edited and you have only made yourself smaller, or you've tried to be perfect, or you fawned, or whatever you did in the name of protective connection, your nervous systems never, ever get the chance to learn whether or not the real you would have been loved. Sit with that for a second. When you do all those things and you play with all those tricks and all of that smoke and all of those mirrors, your nervous system never, ever gets the chance to learn whether or not the real you would have been loved. That's why we all find and hear so many daughter letters and experiences that self-abandonment and loneliness are really good friends. They often do travel together. So, how do I help you build community and connection in your own lives without blowing smoke and kumbaya up all of your behinds? Well, I'm going to get really real, pragmatic, and I'm going to tell you the truth. Your new friends and your new connections are not going to find you just sitting in your house by yourself. No one is walking by wondering if their new best friend might in fact be found behind door number 3. But also, you don't have to make it a whole big thing either. You just have to step outside of the protective patterns you're building in your life. You don't have to do anything big, dramatic, or intense. You don't have to make waves, but you do have to show up because connection is ultimately about proximity. It's about getting and moving closer. Instead of waiting for some perfect person to magically connect with you without you having to do anything different or anything all that hard, You can work on building opportunities where you allow yourself to become familiar. That might mean going to the same coffee shop or gym class. Maybe you take on a volunteer shift. Maybe you're going to find it going to church or becoming a regular at your bookstore. A lot of the times it's in the places where you have already built in ritual and connection. And in these cases, keeping it real here, sisters, sometimes it's simply about looking up, getting out of your phone, being open to engaging in connection with others. Eyes up. Remember the episode a while back? Do you guys remember this one? Tits up. I think we're calling this Tits Up 2.0. It's a tits up kind of thing. Because when we think about relationships, we often think about these deep and important connections. But most relationships are not beginning with that level of vulnerability. They start with recognition. It occurs to someone, there she is again, or hey, I know her. You become familiar to them. They become familiar to you. And your nervous system slowly lowers the threat level. That's where connection starts, with familiarity. And it's familiarity and recognition that start to increase belonging and lead us ultimately to a little bit more intimacy down the road. And here's something that's real and true, you guys. Healing is boring. It is painful. Yes, there's grief and anger and dysregulation, all the freaking things we talk about all the time. But also, keeping it real here, parts of it mind-numbingly boring. You know what looks like healing when you're working on building more connection in your lives? Sometimes it is going to start with staying 5 minutes longer. Sometimes it means recognizing that those kinds of things can be hella awkward, but also still not mean that you're going to be rejected. Healing means allowing yourselves to become recognizable. I knew when this happened, it was going to become a podcast example. But the other day at Starbucks, I placed my order and I drifted from my usual order to try one of the new drinks. And the note that they left on the cup was the anti-Heather. And then all of a sudden, all of my usual baristas were running to the drive-through window to see my reaction to their silliness. That right there is being known. Hey, this isn't what you usually order. Hey, I see you. Hey, I know you well enough to tease you. Notes like that, they're my love language. I loved that so much. And see how easy it is? None of us are trying to become famous here. You're just getting practice at getting your reps in, at becoming recognizable. And it really can be something as simple as letting people begin to expect to see you. Or maybe instead of feeling like your choice is either telling your whole story or saying you're fine, maybe what starts out as practice is you saying one full, honest, real, and true thing. So instead of fine, maybe you're practicing with one person and you're saying, actually, ... and you let just one person in a little bit deeper. A lot of daughters, you guys know this, you're going to get really used to waiting to be chosen. That is always what feels safer. But sometimes you can just invite someone. Healing sometimes really does look like risking being the one who does the asking. And for the love of all things, stop getting in your own way. Do you all know how many conversations or opportunities for connection are right in front of you, right smack dab under your noses, but you talk yourselves out of them. You build stories, you get protective, and you resist those genuine opportunities other people are making as they move toward you. Make sure that you try accepting an invitation, or maybe you accept help, or you let yourself receive some kind of kindness that's offered, even if you don't particularly need it. And I know you guys, I know receiving is always going to be so much harder for you guys than giving, but also you can just try. When an opportunity presents itself, try to let yourself receive. And also keep, period, coming, period, back, period, keep coming back. Everyone, keep returning, because community is never going to be found, built, or nourished inside of single solitary interactions. It just doesn't work that way. Community and connection build on an accumulation of interactions, so you have to let yourself accumulate these experiences of connection. Now, this might be something that's helpful to think about. When you are working to heal and improve the quality of connection in your life, it can be helpful to recognize that for your nervous system, it doesn't need friendship. It needs belonging. Everything I'm trying to help you with today and talk to you about here means we are trying to give your nervous system repeated experiences that teach it it's okay for people to know me, and it's okay for them to stay. And we have to learn. And this one, you guys, has been trial by fire for me personally. But we all have got to learn that we can disappoint someone and they can stay, that they will stay, that the right people stay. Last week in group, I made a facilitation mistake and I had to apologize to the group, and it wasn't for the first time, but I was able to share with them that the first time I apologized, I had been convinced that they might just all change their minds about me, that they were going to start yelling, imposter, imposter, about group or about me. Group doesn't let me perfectly script everything out like I do here on the show. I so wish it could, but it doesn't. I get a lot of opportunities inside of group to practice stepping in the shit, getting it wrong, climbing out, apologizing, climbing again, and not my favorite thing. I don't like it. I really can't wait until my body stops igniting every single time it happens. But also, admittedly, I'm getting my reps in with seeing that mistakes don't end relationships. Conflict doesn't have to end relationships. And none of us should ever again have to feel like we have to earn our place over again every single goddamn day. And when you let yourselves be real and feel that real, it's a little bit like the Velveteen Rabbit, right? Our hair has been loved off, but belonging ceases to become something we perform. And instead, it becomes something we really can experience. And that's how we're going to find healing. Doing all of that on repeat until it feels safe in your nervous systems. When I was talking to you all in episode 141, I focused on how healing is what happens inside of relationship. And I still believe that. Today, I also wanted to help you see and have some grace for yourselves and why relationship has felt so incredibly hard. Because it's not just you and it's not your imagination. Trauma interrupted your ability to make friends, but also it interrupted your opportunity to practice belonging. The healing path toward more connection means that you're giving yourself the opportunity to finally complete all of that developmental and relational work that you never got to do as a kid. And that's pretty cool. I think it's cool anyway. And I also think it's really important. And yes, crazy awkward. And also, yes, scary. Sometimes it is absolutely for sure going to feel like everyone else received the instructions that you somehow missed. And I promise you, they didn't. It's only that they got to have more practice at all of it. I don't want to send you all off from this episode to find your people, but maybe we get you to start by trying to find a familiar face somewhere. For example, I happen to have a cheese lady. Seriously, I now know her name is Linda, and we talk every week at my supermarket. But when I first moved to California, she was the first person I kept seeing on repeat and kept talking to. So, shout out to Linda while I'm on this point. But can we maybe just stay those 5 minutes longer? Can we wave, smile, offer acknowledgement to someone that you see them first, and acknowledge when someone does that for you? When I get all blocked up or guarded or protective or whatever it is I do, I just try saying one more thing. Find and something else that happens to be real and true. Say yes the next time someone asks to help, even if you don't need them to. Offer to help someone else. If you think something nice of someone, if you have a compliment for them, say so. If someone says something nice to you, thank them without making a self-deprecating comment. I also think here that there's value in coming back after something gets awkward, instead of never going back again after something goes slightly sideways. Because let's be honest, community is not going to be something we stumble across like some kind of lucky penny. Connection doesn't just happen. And so many times when we unravel the stories of daughters, we find those absolutely devastating stories of pain, trauma, and betrayal. No doubt, you're never going to hear me minimize that. But also, we will see all of the ways the daughter brain happened to win a round or two, where this wasn't that, but daughters were guarded and careful and protective and walled off. And that, I think, is actually where we have real power and real opportunity to change things. Our community here, for example. Well, my friends, it's here. I tell you about it all the time, and still you have to decide whether or not you're going to sign up to accept the invitation to take a chance on other daughters to join the group. Heck, Claire helped us so much here. She took a chance by showing up in the comment section of the show on Spotify to tell me how something landed for her. She said just one thing, and look at what an incredible conversation she got us started on. And Claire, if you happen to stumble upon this chat, find us inside of Mayhem Daughters. We're right here. And I promise I don't always get preachy, but I do get enthusiastic and passionate. How's that? Maybe we have a deal. I know so many of you think you are incapable of belonging. I promise you that you're not. You deserve so much more grace and compassion than thinking of yourself in that way. We're unfortunately just dealing with the reality that your childhood got you better at surviving than at belonging. And that really sucks. And I wish it weren't true. But you survived. And maybe, not to sound preachy here, Claire, but maybe a part of the reason why you did is so that you can belong. You are not behind because you're incapable of belonging. Yes, healing is finding safe people. And yep, I know how daunting that is. But also, it really is about giving yourself enough ordinary, repeated experiences that your nervous system slowly begins to believe what your mind has wanted to believe all along. That maybe, just maybe, you don't have to earn your place every single place you go. That's certainly true in mayhem. We already believe you. You already belong. Come find us if you think we just might be the lucky penny you've been looking for. All of you are in this incredible community of women from around the world. And I, for sure, most definitely, am in it with you too. Bye for now. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you felt seen, understood, and a little less alone in whatever it is you're carrying. The things we talk about here, your mother wound, trauma, identity, and healing, well, they were never meant to be worked through alone. Understanding matters, of course it does, but healing happens inside of relationship. That is one of the biggest things I have learned over the years of having these conversations with all of you daughters. It's also why I created Mayhem Daughters. Mayhem Daughters is my private online community for daughters of narcissistic and emotionally limited mothers. It's where the conversation continues after the episode ends. It's where daughters connect with one another, ask questions, receive support, and practice the work of healing together. Every week, we gather for Thursday Night Mayhem, our live community gathering. And throughout the week, daughters support one another inside a space built specifically for this kind of work. Because there comes a point when another podcast episode isn't actually what you need the most. Sometimes what you need is a place where you don't have to explain yourself so much, where you're understood, and where you can stop doing this work alone. That's what we've built inside of Mayhem Daughters. You can learn more at mayhemdaughters.com/community. If today's conversation resonated with you, please consider sharing it with another daughter who might need it. Your shares and reviews help more women find these conversations. And if you have a story, a question, or a reflection of your own, I'd love to hear from you. You can send me a message at heather@mayhemdaughters.com. And lastly, a heartfelt thank you to Heather Clark. She edits the show and has had my back for nearly a decade. There are very few people who have witnessed as much of Mayhem's evolution as she has, and I'm deeply grateful to have her beside me as I do this. This isn't just a podcast, it's a community. We see you, we believe you, and you already belong. And I'm so very glad you're here.